Hello, welcome to Kindness in Business, the podcast where we explore the power of compassion and empathy in the business world. My name is Sonia Gonzalez Guillonneau, and I'll be your host. Today's special guest is Denisa Morariu. Denisa is the SDR Director at Puzzle. With a strong track record in scaling sales teams across Europe, she's also held key roles at Content Square, Optimizely, and MindX, combining deep tech industry experience with a sharp strategic mindset. With a background in both business development and government affairs, Denisa brings a unique global perspective to sales leadership. Welcome, Denisa. Very happy to have you here.
Hi, Sonia. Thank you so much for having me here and also for the very kind words.
You're very welcome. I mean, it's all taken from your past and experience, right? Sometimes it's good to just see it all put together by someone else.
Makes it sound so much better.
Well, your track record is impressive, and I saw that you started out in the government affairs and then kind of moved to London to work in the embassy for Romania and then moved on to sales development. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you beyond work? What's your journey look like so far?
Yes. So well spotted there. It was a bit hard to find my way to sales many years ago, and I started, I think, almost 8, 10 years ago. The SDR's roles didn't really exist. There wasn't really an entry level position to there. So I did a few things before I got to my true passion, which is sales. Me as a person, frankly, I think sometimes I'm a person that still believes in the power of kindness, of goodness, and generosity. Sadly, in a world where things seem to be geared towards a bit of the opposite at the moment. There's a lot of fear-based marketing, a lot of drives towards individualism, and also a little bit of greed. So I do feel a bit out of place saying this in 2025, but yeah, it seems I am aiming towards a little bit of a different direction with my values and who I am. And yeah, over the years, I think for me it's been all about people. Like an archaeologist, I like to discover what's behind every person and everything that I've done, whether it was on the study side, I did economics and politics, whether it was my first jobs, they were in finance and politics and later on in startups and sales. It was all about understanding people. How do they behave in different environments? How does technology interact with us? So that's the core of everything that I've done so far.
Well, people and sales link in very nicely, right? So it's good that you've centered
Yeah.
into this career. And I think there are a lot of psychology aspects, a lot of mindset aspects, a lot of curiosity aspects that also come into play when it comes to driving conversations, but also how you interact with the people around you, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think for me as a person, I've always been into the world of arts as well. I'm outside of work. I absolutely love attending art exhibitions, discovering art in many shapes and forms, be it paintings, be it sculptures, anything like this. And also, I love traveling. So sometimes I think of myself as a bit of I have the soul of an artist and a hippie traveler trapped in the body of a salesperson.
Honestly, I can relate to that so much because I'm also a creative person and I've got a degree in art history. I love photography. I love painting, and I'm not the best drawer or like artist, but it's something
Yeah.
that I love doing. I can really appreciate the beauty of it and other people's work, and not just through like the visual arts, but through dance and music and so much of
Exactly.
that. And the same with travel. I find that travel is one of the things that makes you the richest person, right? Because you get to experience just so much and open your heart and meet people and understand that your mindset and your perspective and your way of living is not the only one out there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It opens your mind beyond ways that work can. It's what feeds me as a person, frankly.
Yeah, same. And honestly, it all relates to people, right? Because the more you
Yeah.
understand about people, the more you understand different types of people and backgrounds and stories, the more you can sympathize with the world, I find, but you can also understand more about where people are coming from. It allows you to drive international teams when you're aware of different cultures, right, and different ways
Exactly.
of interacting. But it can drive customer relationships and even like your own activity, right? Like selling
Yeah.
in Spain is not the same as selling in the UK or selling in the Nordics, etc. So all of these experiences allow you to understand how people are, what they react to, and how to treat them better.
Definitely, and ultimately also helps us understand how we can shape the technology around us, right? For better and higher purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking of this kindness piece, and you mentioned at the beginning that that was something important to you and aligned with your values. Can you maybe share a time where compassion or empathy led to a breakthrough in your team or in your company or even for yourself?
Yeah. So for me, I think compassion really sits at the foundation of creating that psychological safety within the team. I really truly believe to my core that when we're the best version of ourselves, that's when we also produce the best work. That's when the most amount of creativity, innovation really comes up. So I did some really amazing stuff with loads of different teams over the years. But I think one of my favorite exercises, it's very, very simple, but it was so much fun and so effective. In my previous role at Content Square, we used to have what we called creative coffee sessions with my marketing teams. And it's just essentially a huge brainstorming exercise where regardless there were a lot of small steps that were building the whole experience because everyone was encouraged to come up with an idea no matter how ridiculous or basic it might have sounded, but it was about bringing everyone together and fostering that environment of creativity. And then at the very end we would let's say we would choose for every session a certain topic. Let's say we were coming up with ideas for our upcoming webinar or something like this. And then at the very end, we would all be scoring our ideas. And again, it was done in a very fun, very creative way. Nobody felt like, my idea was better than yours or anything like this. And it just brought so much to our team culture and also how we interacted with different departments. So we did about 1 million things outside of this, but I just thought we used to do this exercise at least once a month, and it was just such an incredible enabler for our teams to come together and also to reach those new breakthroughs whilst creating that deep psychological safety within our teams.
That sounds like a really good session, and it's good that you did it consistently month over month as well, because it builds those relationships. It makes people safer to bring those ideas to the table, but also it
Yeah,
enhances that relationship between marketing and sales, right? Which is so instrumental
yeah,
because the feedback from sales helps marketing teams deliver better results, put out better content, and potentially drive in more MQLs if they're doing inbound. But at the same time, you need to open those bridges of communication. You need to find ways for people to know each other and to feel confident enough to also be able to go to someone and say, hey, I had a conversation about this. Can we create something around this? Has it been done before? Is it on the roadmap?
yeah,
Be able to influence it as well, because at the end of the day, if they're separate silos, they're going to be selling to different people, to different audiences in different ways, and
yeah,
that could muzzle the like mix in the
yeah.
expectations.
It might result in it might bring some mixed results ultimately. And I think at the core of it also was about going very deep into our ideas, which is a state of collaboration that personally I found you don't really reach that easily
Hmm.
in every single company that you work at. It's there's a lot more to it. It's about people kind of getting on with each other, people having like a certain level of creativity, having that diverse environment to begin with, diversity in thinking, and everyone coming together just led to our ideas on how we're going to approach different problems. Actually went quite deep into the psychology of our end users and how we're going to get there. So yeah, it just helped us stand out a lot and it was a real breakthrough. That's for example how I think Content Square at the time went from a company with 200 people to almost 3,000 employees. It had a period of hyper growth because of situations like this and collaboration levels that we've reached between our teams.
That sounds awesome. And I think as well, coming from an individuality standpoint, when people feel heard and they feel like their ideas matter and they can make an impact, they will bring more of those. And that's the
Exactly.
only way to keep fresh and to evolve as a company as well, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hope that some teams take on the inspiration and potentially create something similar between their sales and marketing teams.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that we see that, are trying to lead their business with a little bit more heart or humanity, and maybe they don't know how, maybe they're still trying to figure it out. But what's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone in that position?
I think it's always very important to invest in understanding yourself. I guess we can see this challenge from the perspective of a leader. We can see it from the perspective of an individual contributor, right? From the perspective of a leader, I think it's very important to invest in yourself, to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your boundaries as a person as well. I think it always pays off. I think it's worth investing some time into understanding how you can create psychological safety, because a lot of good stuff comes from that. And from an individual contributor standpoint, I think it's very important to understand maybe the energy that you bring to the team as well. Because I find that a lot of people are unaware of how they can create positivity or negativity when it comes to collaborating with other people or collaborating within a team. And the way we carry ourselves has actually a much greater impact than we sometimes think. And words matter, and how we carry ourselves really, really matters. Outside of, more practical business advice, I like to joke with my friends that you should always have your ABKs in place. This is my new ABC, and ABK stands for always be a kid. I think it's so easy to take things a bit too seriously, especially with the amount of challenges we have around us today. I think the essence stays the same. Don't forget to play. Don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to spread cheer, exactly like a kid, and just to enjoy the little moments, because after all, that's what life is about, right? So ABKs is my new mission.
I love it. And I think I've said this before on one of these episodes, but there's this quote I really like that says, not every day is a good day, but there is something good in every day, right? So finding those little moments of joy is really important, especially in the tough times, because those are what's going to carry you through for the next day. And the more
Yeah,
you start appreciating what you've got, the less you look for what you don't have.
I agree.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for sharing, and I hope that that advice reaches someone in need today, and that they apply it to themselves. I fully agree as well with the element of getting to know yourself, because the more you understand yourself, the more you look after yourself, the more you can look after the people around you as well.
yes.
But also
It always pays
understand.
off, and
Go ahead.
sorry, it always pays off to understand yourself as well, because leaders are also people, right? And we all have our limitations, and we all have our strengths as well. So just by understanding what your strengths are, you can lead with that a lot, right? You know what you're good at as a person, so you can focus on channeling that within your team every day. And again, it helps you lead with more authenticity and empathy, and you can understand the things around you much better, just like you mentioned.
So, to everyone listen, don't forget that every single person is just a human being, right? Everyone has their problems, everyone's fighting their battles. And so, being kind goes a long way. And being kind can mean a lot of different things, right? But, you know, don't be a jerk, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. If we keep it simple, that's what it boils down to. And it's hard sometimes to also understand the difference between maybe being strict or creating some sort of boundaries, and how you can balance that with leading with kindness. It's not very obvious. And it's so easy for someone to just say that, you're doing the wrong thing, or, you're not being kind, essentially. And there's a lot of complexity on both sides. But I think the world would be a much better place if we would just lean into each other's understanding a bit more, right, from both sides.
I couldn't agree more. So, we're going to move on to the sales development and AI portion of the podcast. And the first question I have for you is, how has the role of sales development evolved in the last few years, and what changes do you see coming?
Yeah, I won't claim to have all the answers, but I do have some hypotheses. I think we've lived through a few eras of sales, right? We've lived through the era of SDRs and sales reps who would go through a paper-based database and call numbers through it. I think then we moved to an era of where we were enabled by technology to do pretty much the same thing. Then that technology evolved and we moved to an era of automation. And now we have reached the era of automation and personalization at scale. And I think this is where AI is really making a difference for everyone in the sales world, not just SDRs. I've been thinking a lot about this topic recently because I sell a lot of AI technology myself, and I'm reading a lot about the developments in the market. I'm also assessing a lot of AI providers to help us with different parts of the sales process. And I think at the core of it, two things have remained the same, at least until the present date, 14th of May. People are the same. Nothing has changed on our side. Yes, you might have, obviously, we have more technical abilities and you have to have strengths that comply with these technologies. You need to be organized, you need to be strategic in order to make the most out of them. But the best sales reps, the best STRs, the best AEs remain the ones that manage to bring their authentic self in the sales process. And we heard so many stories over the years about this lady who used to do theater before, and then she would have these really funky openers on the calls, and that's how she managed to engage all her prospects. And we heard all these stories about people from various backgrounds, again bringing that into their messaging and managing to really put their personality on display when they engage with their customers and their prospects. The key to that has not changed. It has remained the same. And with AI technology or without it, we still have the same challenge, right? Maybe at a just different scale altogether. And the challenge has always been, how do you stand out of the crowd to get attention? And again, that's deeply interlinked to how you use that technology to get you to an efficient state of how you operate, but also how advanced are you as a salesperson? How deeply do you understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and how does your personality come through the selling process itself? And again, that's work that we do with ourselves, and that's work that we do with ourselves over time, over our years of experiencing different backgrounds, different work experiences, different places to live, different cultures. And I don't think that will change anytime soon. I think from my perspective for now, AI is not able to replace SDRs. It's able to replace SDRs that were focusing perhaps on very mechanical tasks until now, focused on a lot of, let's say, volume rather than volume and quality, or just quality when it comes to, let's say, trickier sales processes. And I have a quote from one of my colleagues, Ed Puzzle, and he talked at one of our kickoffs about how actually, if you boil it down, AI right now is not actually that advanced. If you look at this technology as it is in the market right now, it's very much focused on driving efficiency, but it's actually the creativity of the people that really takes this technology to new heights. And this is how I'm thinking about it right now. How many applications could we find for it in our day-to-day lives, in our work, to really help us go next level with it? And I think for me, the ideal setup for this would be that every SDR in my team has some sort of AI co-pilot. You know, it's the new cat and dog in our lives. And perhaps I'm a bit idealistic, but I really hope that AI doesn't replace people fully in the future. We manage, and I don't think this should be our goal. I think we should just learn how it can make our lives much better and how it can help us improve our day to day, not completely replace us and create a humanity in crisis.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, one of the things that you've mentioned around AI not being yet where it will be is 100% true. And it is evolving so rapidly now that even in a year from now, it will be a completely different thing than it is now. At the same time, it's something that's been around for a long time. It's something they've been working on for a long time as well. So it's had a lot of iterations, it's had a lot of changes, and it will continue. One of the things that has been brought up a few times on the podcast is that actually AI will help good SDRs, but it will potentially replace bad SDRs, right? So the SDRs, the AEs of today need to really work with AI, but don't allow AI to do their work, because that's not going to generate the results that they're expecting, and essentially will turn them into lazy sellers. And that's not what AI is there for. It's there to facilitate, it's there to make your research quicker, it's there to help you come up with better processes, strategies, help with your time management, etc. So many things that it can help you with, even help you with your messaging, but don't let it write it for you. You write it and then
Yeah.
tell it to make it better, to change it, to shorten it, however you want it.
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand what our future will look like, right? It used to be such a standard that you would get asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, right? And we all kind of had a blank slate and we started drawing up our life. I think it's almost impossible for us to predict where our life will be even next year with all the advancements that we see around us and the new applications. Without getting too philosophical, I think it's also interesting to understand the role of sales as a whole in the era of AI, not necessarily just SDRs, because in essence, a salesperson solves one problem, which is that there are so many different technologies on the market. So when a company is trying to assess the best solution, you have a sales rep that basically advises you whether a technology is a good fit or a bad fit based on your different conditions. Maybe AI will be able to solve that problem altogether and sales reps won't be needed as a whole. Maybe you don't need to spend all this time. Maybe AI will be better at advising you what technology you need for your respective challenge. Maybe it manages to get its hands on a lot of private information or information that is siloed in different companies over the next few years, that it makes the role of the salesperson altogether redundant. But that's a pretty bleak outlook of the future. Again, I'm quite idealistic, and I like to think that technology is here to help us, right? And this is how I'm really embracing AI, and I'm advising everyone in my teams and the teams that we work with to do so, because I do think it's a force for good, and it helps us reach new heights of creativity in ways perhaps we weren't able to do so before.
I agree. I agree. And I think we will continue to need to be on top of it because, as we said, it's going to continue to change. So the people that are not on it at all will need to do a big catch up. The people that are on it at least will try and understand as it progresses. And I think that will help them in itself. But a very interesting question I have for you is, do you think AI can be trained to sell with kindness? And what would that look like if it was possible?
Yes, I definitely think it can be trained with kindness and to have that human-centered approach in mind. But is this what people want? Because AI is built a lot on, well, first of all, it's built by people. It picks out available information and basically builds its brain from that. So it's a lot about what people feed it, right? I think the question that we could ask is, how can we make kindness and having this human-centered approach a priority for our society? And where do we start with that? And I don't have the answers to this question. I've been watching documentaries and things like this over the years. Not to go too much on a tangent, but for example, there are some countries in the Nordics that are doing experiments on how kids focusing less on STEM sciences in the early ages and getting them more focused on expressing through gestures and verbally as well, positive human values and exercising them actively in their kids community actually has a huge impact on how they grow later on as teenagers and adults. And they're more inclined to be more kind, nicer, positive, just because, let's say, they focus less on calculating and learning how to write and things like this. And they actually focus more on the people element and the humanity element of how to be nice to each other. So they're little snippets of combining maybe the educational side, the political side, and obviously that shapes a lot how technology is built. But I don't think we have an answer for it now, and we can see so many examples of AI being discriminatory towards different groups of people, towards women, and ask it to build you an image of a person in sales, and most probably it won't be a woman. So it's hard to understand how we can do it in the short term, but I think there's a long-term approach to it as well. And I think it's something that sits deep in our society and how we grow people, and that's deeply interconnected to how we grow AI as well.
Thank you for sharing. And let's see what happens in 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the round fire section of the podcast. So, in this section, I'm going to ask you three questions just based on time. I'm going to ask you four actually. So, the first one
Okay.
is going to be kindness boss or co worker you've ever had. You can either mention them or say what made them stand out.
I had so many lovely people along the way, people that you would never even be aware of the amazing gestures they do at work or outside of work. I had people who were donating super large amounts to helping families in need, and they were running all these programs outside of work, and nobody knew about them. We just happened to have coffee one day, and they were talking about it. One person does come to mind straight away, and I think it's one of my old colleagues from Optimizely, a lady called Ophelia Bellio. I'll send her the podcast afterwards so she can watch this. She was at that time a director of facilities, and I think that role is incredibly complex and really underestimated in a company. You're dealing with creating the right setup for people and it's a lot about thinking how do they interact with each other. I think her kindness and her deep understanding of people just inspired me to dig so much deeper into myself. And the best part is that I think most of the time she was totally unaware of her aura as a person and how deep she can also be. So I'll give you an example. I think we had a colleague at some point that was constantly late to work, and I didn't really have such a deep understanding of people personally at that time. I was also quite young. And to me, my first instinct was to judge a bit that person and think, okay, they're super disorganized. They're not coming to work on time. You know, I don't think this person is very serious about this company or the role that they're doing. But actually, Ophelia begged to differ instantly. And she told me, hey, I think that person is actually going through a lot because someone who's systematically late to work probably shows that something is happening in their personal life that is taking over how they want to act day to day. It's a shameful experience. Nobody wants to go through it every day when they have to come to work. And again, we were in an era of pre-COVID. Everyone was coming into work every day, so it's pretty obvious that something was definitely happening in their life. And she did this stuff all the time. She offered me just a completely different perspective of what was happening with people, and she was always leading with kindness in everything that she did, with the way she was leading her team. So for me, it was just a source of inspiration. And whenever I need a different perspective, she's the first person that I call. And she always has this, unprovoked wisdom that she just sprinkles around her. And yeah, just an incredible person and just leading with kindness in every aspect of her life.
That's so nice. And I hope Ophelia watches this and, even if she wasn't aware, she realizes the impact that you can make on people unaware.
Yeah, she deserves a shout out for sure.
The second round fire question is: do you have a kindness ritual that you practice daily, weekly, or monthly?
Yes, I like to be kind with myself because I do a lot of active gestures to be kind with others. So sometimes it consumes my energy a bit. It takes effort to be kind and be nice. I go on regular holidays. I take myself to arts workshops to replenish the artist within. But something that I like to, besides my ABK, always be a kid. I like to also have very small rituals with my husband or my friends. So, for example, with my husband, whenever we get a drink somewhere, regardless of what it is, we cheer. And it's all about celebrating all the small moments. And, we always stop and we look around us and we're like, isn't this just an incredible view? Let's enjoy the sun. Let's take it all in. So we make a lot of active gestures that we learned along the years to really stop and just breathe the fresh air, just appreciate what we have, be grateful. If we're grateful for someone, we'll send them text messages straight away. Yeah, so it's something that I think feeds us, and for me personally, it's a way to be kind to myself.
To be kind and to be present, right? To be in that moment and to enjoy it rather than be rushing onto the next thing and to the next thought and just kind of
Yeah.
take it for what it is, which sounds really nice. What is one book, podcast, or resource that's helped you lead with more kindness?
One book that I would recommend to anyone to read is actually from a very famous lady right now, Brené Brown. The book is called Daring Greatly, and she has, yeah, there we go. Brené is coming out.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Yeah. I read this book at the recommendation of my best friend over 10 years ago. Brene, I think, was just starting to get famous through her, I think is now one of the most popular TED Talks of all time, and it's called The Power of Vulnerability. But for me personally, she has changed my life in every possible way. And the book is all about professing how vulnerability is not actually a weakness. And the more you practice talking in an open way about it, whether it's with your friends, with your family, with your team, and owning all the mess ups that we do along the way, the more power it actually gives you. Because the best things come from actually admitting that things are not quite okay or that things have happened. And then it allows other people to indulge into that psychological safety again that you're creating. And to me, Brene Brown is just probably the most inspiring researcher I found to date. I love people like her, Esther Perel, and many, many others. And I listen to their podcasts and I read their books and watch everything they produce all the time because it's just such an inspiration to how we can lead our life in different ways. And it's always quite tricky to find the how to lead with being nice and with kindness as well. A lot of researchers kind of guide you to be a bit more cutthroat, but you don't really find the alternative that easily. So I couldn't recommend her enough. All the stuff that she's done, and especially Daring Greatly, is just an incredible book.
Fully agree, and I agree with you that everything she puts out is just gold. There's so many nuggets, and it's not necessarily like on the practical tips. It's not about that. It's just the way she shows up, the way she speaks, the way she is as a person that enables other people to show up as themselves, but also with
Yes.
that added element of kindness and leading from the perspective of you're leading other people, right? And I
Yes.
think that's so important and has inspired my leadership style. I'm sure has inspired your leadership style as
Yes.
well.
And it felt so uncomfortable when I practiced her methods initially, but once I got a handle of it and once she became a bit more popular, it was very obvious to me that that's such a fruitful way to live your life. It just makes you a whole person when you try these things out and you actually see them working in practice. Yeah, just an incredible woman, and I couldn't agree more. She is just. I feel like we need a TV series about her life as a whole.
There was a Netflix show about her. They did a documentary style.
I haven't watched it. I will watch it though. It's on my immediate to-do list after this podcast.
You've got plans for the weekend now.
Yes, exactly.
The last question in the round fire is if your leadership style had a theme song, what would it be? And no pressure, but it will be added to the Spotify leadership songs playlist.
I will share a song that I've been listening to lately. And so I'm a big fan of Kai Tranada. Not sure how familiar people are with his songs, but I'll send it to you afterwards. It's called Dance, Dance, Dance. If this song doesn't lift you off your seat and makes you dance and feel like, someone just injected 500 milliliters of your best life into you instantly, I don't know what will. So I'll leave you with this song as a pick me up and hopefully something that will bring a bit of positivity. And I'm sure some kindness always comes hand in hand with that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'll add it and I'll listen to it because I don't think I've listened to it before. I've got one last question for you, and it is
Yes.
can you nominate two people that I should speak to next?
Yes, I would love to nominate two amazing women. One of them who I know very well, one of them who I would like to know better. The lady who I know very well is actually an absolutely incredible woman who used to be fresh out of university, part of my team. She became an SDR. She was the most incredible SDR that I've had the pleasure to work with over all these years. Just for a reference point, we had about 200 SDRs in the entire organization, and in 2 years, she became number one
Wow. Well done.
out of 200 people fresh out of uni. And then she went on to become an AE. I tried to convince her to stay on the SDR leadership side, but I can only nurture people to get to that place. But she chose sell over us. A bit of a heartbreak moment there for me. And then she went on to become a top performer in her team from her first year as an A. And she was working with people that were at least 10, 15 years more experienced than her. Her achievements were absolutely incredible. She's an absolute machine, and her name is Elika Bedroud. I would love to see how she talks about her journey from an SDR to AE, also how she ramped herself up and how does she do it because I can guarantee you she's an absolute machine. And the other person I had in mind is Georgia Kirwan. I hope I haven't botched your last name, Georgia. Sorry about that. She is an absolutely amazing SDR female leader. We were postponing having a coffee for almost 2 years now because I've been traveling in between and she was traveling after. But she does so much incredible work for helping specifically females in the sales world and getting more women to take on the SDR role and the sales roles. And I would love to hear all the amazing stuff she's been doing over the years and what she found as part of these communities. And all in all, from the amount of information I know about her right now, she just seems to be such an incredible woman. I would love to have you interview her, Sonia.
Thank you so much for nominating two ladies. We do have a majority of men in the podcast, as you know. So it'll be really good to have these conversations. And obviously, it's always good when ladies are nominated because then I get to reach out to them and get to know them myself as well because I'm guilty of it too. I know more men in sales than I do women, right? And so from that
Yeah,
perspective, because there is more of them, simply put, and 10 years ago
yeah, of
there were
course.
even more. So that's not a topic that we've discussed today, but I'm always very happy to bring on lovely ladies like yourself on the podcast and have these insightful conversations coming from potentially a different perspective as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you to everyone that's listening or watching today, and I'll see you next week with another episode.
Thank you so much, Sonia.